Welcome back to another episode of Where Are They Now? This is our 2006 Lexus RX330 that we did a while back. This is the one that has a salvage title, not because it was in an accident or flood or theft or anything like that, but because they abandoned it at a tow yard. They got arrested, towed it in, and left it there. So the tow yard got a COP on it, and the only thing in Illinois that we can do with the COP is get a salvage title. So got a salvage title, got it rebuilt, and here we are. Turns out that it had already been fixed once before, which wasn't on the Carfax, so I had to redo that. So we'll take a look and see how my work held up all after, I don't know, I think it's been like 3 years, and definitely been driven in the salt, and I know that for a fact because I drove in the salt. And this thing's actually really good in the winter. One of the best winter vehicles I've ever had. So it's been gone for a couple of years. I think they got about 40,000 miles on it. And I've seen it one other time other than right now. And that was just for a blower motor that was making all kinds of noise and vibrating real bad. Pulled it down, and turns out that a resident had moved in. So I just evicted our resident and his house with him and put it all back together. Everything was fine. Didn't really see a need to make a video on that. So now we have it back because it's making more noise. This noise is between 30 and 60 mile an hour. Driving on the highway, it makes a kind of a wheel bearing grinding kind of noise. If you step on the gas, it goes away. You let off the gas, it comes back. You hit the brakes, and sometimes it'll come and go. So I got an idea of what that might be. I tried to record it for you, but it just did not come out in the video. So you'll have to take my word for it. It is making noise. So we'll hop underneath it, and I'll take a look at it and show you what I think it is. And then we're going to fix that because it's broken regardless. It also has a hatch that likes to come crashing down on your head occasionally, usually when it's cold. It's been sitting inside all afternoon, actually all night. So it's a little warm in here. Not too warm because, as you guys know, the heat doesn't work in here. So we'll see if it'll do it, but I doubt it will. Like I said, when it warms up, the hatch stays up. So pretty easy. Those are just the lift struts. When it gets cold, it's kind of like a tire. It loses the pressure inside. Doesn't have the support to hold up our hatch. So we're just going to throw a new one on. I did see that they were leaking. So we're going to throw 2 new ones on actually. But let's climb underneath so that you guys can see what I'm seeing underneath. And then we'll take a look at the rest of it. So here's what I'm seeing. It's very wet back here. Definitely looks like our pinion seal is leaking. Supposedly somebody did check the fluid on it, but I don't know how because, well, they must have had one of those special sockets with the rounded ends on it because that check plug is completely rounded off. So I decided against taking it out of there. We'll pull the drain plug out and see what it looks like in a second, but I'm guessing it's probably empty in there, and we do have quite a bit of play in the pinion here. So we went ahead and got a differential for this thing. They're not too expensive. They're pretty much all over. They also fit Highlanders, and they fit a bunch of years for this. So they're pretty easy to find. All you really need is one that's all-wheel drive. So it looks like a pretty easy job. Pull the axles out, bolt back here, 2 bolts back here, and pull the drive shaft off and a couple bolts here. Looks like we can take this whole support down, make it a lot easier than trying to slide this out of there, but we'll find out. I don't know. I did spray everything down with penetrating oil because I knew I'd be doing this job, so hopefully make my life a little bit easier, but probably not too much easier because it is rusty. Welcome to Illinois. So let's get it apart. We'll start with the drive shaft. These bolts don't look too rusty, so it should be pretty easy. They're just nuts and bolts, so we got to hold the back of it with a wrench and spin them off of there. We can spin our drive shaft around, get to the other side. Pull our bolts out of there, which were totally unnecessary since it's rusted on. We'll grab the closest hammer, knock that drive shaft loose. This hammer was cleverly disguised as a 2x2 piece of steel tube. Everything's a hammer if you're brave enough. We'll pull the drain plug out of this thing and see what goodies are inside. That's a lot of metal.
and not a lot of oil. In case you're wondering, that is a magnet on the back of that drain plug that's supposed to catch normal metal wear in between oil changes on the differential, which apparently is every time the differential goes out for this car. 200,000 miles. So we'll let that drain and inspect our little metallic mess here.
That's a lot of metal. Maybe if we put it all back together, we'll fix our bearings. We're just going to replace it.
Got our normal fine pieces and some pretty big chunks in there. I'm betting that's the pinion bearing. Now we got to pull our tires off. I did put these tires on back when I sold the car, and whatever miles they put on it or what's on these tires, and there's not a whole lot of wear. They're not even halfway gone yet, so these should be about 100,000 mile tires. They're not expensive, but they do seem to last. I've used them a few times. Now we can unbolt our strut from the knuckle. We'll tap the bolts out or destroy the threads, one or the other. That strut a little wiggle and pull the bolts the rest of the way out. Knock everything off the lift. Now we can pull our wheel off the other side. Unbolt the strut on this side. That bolt decided to walk its way out. This one needed a little wiggling and coaxing. I jammed a 2x4 in between the spare tire to give myself a little room in here. I know better than to try to lower the spare tire down because those little cable mechanisms like to rust, and I don't want to be responsible if it breaks. So I try to avoid letting it down if I can. So I was able to jam that 2x4 in there and give myself a little room because we got 3 bolts on the back of here to loosen up that hold our differential into that subframe. Break them loose with the hand tools first. They're pretty rusty. Once they get started, they do come right out. We're going to leave 1 bolt in there. There's 3, so. Okay, I guess we're going to take all of them out. And get the ratchet stuck. So I'm going to move it over to the other spot where it's easier to get to and screw it in a couple threads just so that something's in there, and then we're ready to pull the differential out. We just unscrew that last couple threads. We can pop our drive axle out of the differential and see if unbolting that strut gave us enough room. It doesn't look like it. Not ready to accept it just yet. But since we're here, we'll pop the other one loose. We have to take a little more of the suspension apart. So we'll pop the caliper off because we're going to start pulling on that brake hose and I don't want to have to buy one. We'll also disconnect the ABS wire. And we can start disconnecting some trailing arms. We'll just leave the radius arms connected and then hold the rest of that suspension up there. Then we're going to go over to the other side and do the same thing. Stuff this caliper up there. And both our front trailing arm and our rear. Comes the caliper, wants to play. Stuff it back up there. And that gave us enough room to get our drive axle out. So we're just going to tuck it up on top of our differential, or it hopefully won't be in our way.
So it would be great if we could just take this bolt out and take this whole bracket down. Unfortunately, they put it in this way, with the gas tank right here. Thanks, engineers. Could have put it in the other way.
The Mechanics love to blame engineers for all their troubles. Engineers love to blame the finance department for all of their struggles. Now, you can't tell me it was going to cost more to build this car if they put the bolt in the other way. So, engineers, this is on you. So we're just going to unbolt our differential from that bracket. See if we can weasel it out of there. It's a little rusty. So we got to break that Illinois Loctite loose. We're just going to run the bolt back and forth so we don't snap it off of there. And we won. Now we'll pull our bolt out of the back that we put in there temporarily. See if we can get this thing out of here. Close. Gives us the illusion of hope. But we're hitting the floor. I did take the drive axle out of the other side. It was pretty much the same way as that side. So we need to rethink our strategy. It's not going to fit with that bracket still in there. And I know better than to walk underneath it without putting a bolt in here to hold it on, because even though I can't get it out of here, it will immediately fall on top of me. So we're going to take this side of the bracket down, the side that we can actually get the bolt out of. We're just going to use the caveman method, because that bolt's pretty rusty. And the electric tools won't do it. Got our bolt out of there. Now we're going to stick a screwdriver in there instead of the bolt. It's much easier to slide out of there. We can unbolt our safety bolt back here. Push up on that differential. Pull our screwdriver out of there. And drop that bracket down a little bit. See if that gives us enough room. And it does. So we can put our new one up here. Well, new to this car. And it comes painted neon green. That's so you can't return it and say you didn't install it. Put our screwdriver back in there temporarily. And we'll put our safety bolt in the back. And we can go ahead and run it in there a little bit. And put the rest of them in. Put them all down. We'll replace our screwdriver with a bolt. And put our nut on the other side and tighten it up. Now we can put our gratuitously long bolts back in that hold our differential to that bracket. The nuts on the top of those bolts have a little metal arm welded to them, and the idea is they're supposed to catch the differential so you don't need a wrench to tighten them up. Of course, the one that was really rusted up and we had to work back and forth now looks like a pretzel, but it still does its job. Now we're ready to reinstall our drive shaft. I know, I should have cleaned the paint off of there before I put the drive shaft on. But it's so pretty, and I don't get paid for that. Just going to start all of our nuts and bolts. Once we have them all started, we can start tightening them up. There is a flange on that pinion, so you want to make sure the drive shaft is sitting flush in there. It's over that flange. We'll tighten them all down to manufacturer specs. 6 electric ugga-duggas. We'll put our little shipping caps out of there. A little grease on our seal. And slide our drive axle in there. I would have replaced the seals, but the parts store was closed, so I'm going to take a chance. I'll drive it around a little bit before I give it back to the customer, and if it starts leaking, I've only cost myself some time. We're going to drain all of whatever fluid is left in here. We'll put some fresh stuff in there. Not quite as much metal. It is pretty dirty. Put our drain plug back in. Click. Pull the cap out of this side. And we're going to go ahead and fill it up. Yes, there is a little fill plug right next to it, but this one is so much easier. especially if you have to use the little quart bottles to fill it up. And we'll use some of that gear lube to lubricate our seal and stuff our axle in there. Tap it in there. I assume that's why they put that little ring on there. We'll pull our check plug out, drain it to the proper level, and then tighten it back up. Click. We'll recheck our drain plug. Not sure if I had the right torque setting. And we're going to do a little cleaning. I want to make sure that that differential is nice and dry so that if we do have any leaks, we'll be able to see them right away. We're going to use a little excessive force to remove the zip tie that's holding our little tag on, because I'm lazy and don't want to walk to get a pair of side cutters to cut the zip tie. Now we can throw our suspension up here. Put the bolts in the knuckle, hold them through the strut. And we'll slide our caliper in here. It's going to be time for brakes soon. The customer has a little time left on these, and we don't want to spend all of his money at once. We can come back for those. Our ABS wire back in here. We can bolt our caliper in. But our trailing arm wants to be in the way, so we're going to pry down on that a little bit. Slide our boots back over our caliper slides. And tighten up the bolts on our strut. Pry our trailing arms down a little bit so we can get the bolt started. Kind of need 3 hands for this. Or 2 hands and just make lots of faces. And we got all our bolts started, so now we can just tighten them all up. Now we can bolt our suspension back up on our driver's side. If I were to do this job again, I would have unbolted just the suspension on the passenger side, and this side I would have popped the drive axle out, and there's enough room to drop that differential down and slide it off the drive axle with the drive axle still in the car and all the suspension connected. I just wasn't sure if there was going to be enough room and how hard it was going to be to get that differential out. And you don't want to find out when you're holding on to it that you can't get it out of there and you can't get it back in there. It'd be alright if you had some friends to help you, but you all know I don't have any friends, so I just wanted to make sure that axle wasn't going to be in my way and spent a little extra time to take it out of there.
Okay, so the only thing we have left to do to finish that job is to put our tires back on, but I figured before we did that, we'll take a look at my work over here. Now, that wasn't really a difficult job. It only took me a little over an hour and 15 minutes or something. So it would have been a lot easier had the engineers that designed this ever worked on a vehicle. But whatever. It is what it is. Not that hard of a job. The worst part is just getting those drive axles out a little bit. And there's probably different ways you could do it. But the problem I was having was this axle is even longer on this side than it is on that side. So that's why I didn't want to just take it out of the hub. I would have been having the same struggle over here and still have to take all this apart. So I just struggled with the end side and it didn't work out that bad. So there might be an easier way to do it, but it didn't take me that long, so I'm fine with it. But anyway, our paint doesn't look too bad, pretty good since I don't think it's ever been washed since I sold it to them. Our gaps look pretty good. They haven't moved at all. There's no rust on our seam. You can see where I stopped with our undercoating. We didn't put the thick stuff back on. But there's no rust in there. No rust on any of the welds. Can't say the same for Toyota's work back here. Starts peeling underneath the seam sealer in this corner. Pretty common. No rust at any of our joints there. And the bottom of our door is actually looking pretty good. So I'd say this job held up pretty well. It was an easy one, but it was definitely better than the last guys that didn't hold up.
Somebody's been here before. I can only assume they used a cement mixer to mix up the Bondo required for this job. At least these pieces actually hardened. We won't even make any mention of the airbag that was cut out and just tucked up there. And the best part is, no mention of any of this on the Carfax. So let's see what the inside of our differential looks like. Pretty easy to get this back cover off, so let me just pull it off of here. Oh look, I actually found a hammer.
Ew. Well, that was anticlimactic. I was hoping something would really be broken in there. I think all that metal was just normal wear. Definitely part of the pinion bearing. If I move the pinion up and down, you can see how much that gear moves. That's just up and down. And side to side is almost as bad. But other than that, it doesn't look that bad. No teeth missing. Just a lot of wear. Probably ate the bearing up in the front, and that's what's making our noise. Step on the gas and load the bearing, it tightens up and doesn't make any noise. That's why when you let off the gas, that's when you hear the noise. Now we're going to button this all back up and send it back for a core charge.
Look at this hack putting it back together without putting any sealer in there. He's probably not even going to tighten these bolts up to manufacturer specs. So our differential's done. We can go ahead and fix our hatch. Just going to wait for me to walk under it before it falls. Just pull the little clips out and pop them off of there. Stick a pick in there and rock it back. You don't have to take the clips all the way out, just pull them back a little bit. Use our other hand to hold the gate up. Clip the new ones on. And we've already improved it because our gate goes up a lot higher with the new one. Leads me to believe this really was our problem. Come on. Darn child-proof packaging. Snap it in. Make sure it's not coming off of there. Clean up our mess.
Wow.
Stand up so far. Sure it opens. Seems to open a little faster.
I took it for a little ride. Our noise is completely gone. The hatch has yet to fall on my head. I'm going to call this job completely finished. Unfortunately, you guys did not get to experience the worst part of this entire job, and that was the smell. If there's anything worse than the smell of gear lube, it's burnt gear lube. And that's what this thing smelled like. It still smells like it. So, sorry, until they invent smell-o-vision, you guys can't get the full experience, but trust me, you don't want it. So, let's go take a look at our other car. And now for a bonus, where are they now? Apparently it's like the Toyota edition. This is the Afternoon Cruise 2006 Scion TC, her old 2006 Scion TC, because she got a new car, she upgraded. It's been about 11 years since I rebuilt this car, and over 100,000 miles. It was hitting the front end, over the bumper, airbags didn't deploy, pretty easy hit. At the time, I had like 4 different cars for her to choose from, and she chose this one. It was actually a perfect car for her. We really didn't do anything to it other than normal maintenance stuff, and you guys actually saw a lot of what we did. We did do an alternator, which you may or may not consider that normal maintenance, but with 200,000 miles, it might be. And it actually passed over 200,000 miles on my way back from Texas when I delivered her car to her. And because you're gonna ask, she got an RDX. So apparently when you become a doctor and you get all rich, the beaters don't cut it anymore. So she wanted something a little nicer. And you drive a car for 11 years, you kind of get bored with it. So I drove it back, had no trouble with it. It really doesn't need anything. She took care of it, maybe an oil change just from driving that far, and I'll be throwing it up for sale. I don't think it's gonna make it to my website because I have had quite a few people that were interested in a cheap car for their kids, and that's exactly what this thing is for. If it's up on my website, you'll be able to buy it. If not, then sorry you missed out, there'll be more. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys when I have an update on more of my builds. I have more things to build, or I just have some random things to work on. Thanks for watching.